Hey guys, so I have been wanting to make a video talking about why I believe that we are in fact very close to the time of Jesus's return. So this is something that I've mentioned in previous videos. This is something that many people in the Christian space are talking about right now, but there is actual undeniable evidence that points toward that return. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I went ahead and made some notes, so you guys will see my eyes kind of shifting as I refer to those, but I'll do my best to talk to you guys as I do the video. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about 7 undeniable things that point toward Jesus's return. So having said that, I will just dive right into it because I have a feeling it's already going to be kind of long as it is. So sign number 1 is that Israel was restored in 1948 on May 14th. It became a nation again after 2,000 years of being dispersed across the entire world. Obviously, it wasn't exactly 2,000 years, but in 70 AD, they were basically kicked out of the temple. There was a lot of, or they were massacred. And they were taken captive, and they were literally spread to the 4 corners of the earth, just like God said would happen in the Old Testament, and also that Jesus warned while he was still before his crucifixion. So the reason why this is a major sign, because some people are like, okay, great, Israel's restored. What does that have to do with, Jesus's return? Well, the key component in Old Testament prophecies for the coming of the Messiah as a conquering king was the restoration of Israel. It was always tied together. Every single time that it talked about the restoration of Israel, in that exact same part of the prophecy, it would talk about the return of Christ as the conquering king and as Israel's Messiah. In Zechariah and Ezekiel, these are prime examples, especially Ezekiel 25 to 48, or specifically chapter 37, which talks about the dry bones. And in Zechariah, it also, throughout the entire book, focuses on the judgment of Israel and then the restoration of Israel, followed by the conquering king, the Messiah, coming in the clouds. Also, Jesus himself said that this would be a key indicator when he gave the fig tree prophecy of the Olivet Discourse. And in Matthew 24, 32 through 35. Some people read that and they're like, well, I'm not really sure if that actually is referring to Israel. But actually, we do know that the fig tree represents Israel because of other scriptures that demonstrate this point. I've learned that you always use scripture to interpret scripture, especially in matters of prophecy or understanding symbolism. And so there's numerous scripture references that depict Israel as a fig tree. There's Hosea 9:10. There's Jeremiah 8:13, there's Jeremiah 24, there's Micah 4:4, and there's also the instance where Jesus cursed a fig tree when it was not producing fruit, when he was hungry. This was both a curse on the tree itself for not producing fruit, but also it was understood that it was a prophecy and a curse on Israel for not recognizing him as their Messiah when he came the first time, which Jesus talked about numerous times with the Pharisees and also with his disciples. So it's very clear in scripture that Israel is represented by a fig tree. And so when Jesus talks about the fig tree parable and prophecy, this is what he's saying. And so just for reference, I'm going to put the verse references that I mentioned in the video description if you would like to look them up on your own. But for the case of this argument, I'm going to go ahead and read the parable of the fig tree. So Jesus says, "Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, you know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away." Obviously, the generation that Jesus was living in did actually pass away because it was 2,000 years ago. So it's understood when we're reading this prophecy that it's talking about the generation that sees the restoration of Israel, because that's what it says. It says that the branches become tender and put forth leaves. It's the restoration of Israel, and that when we see these things happening, we know that that time is near, and that generation would by no means pass away. There's a lot of debate on exactly how long is a generation and what that means. I'm not getting into that here because it's so controversial, but the point is that Israel itself being restored is a very clear indicator in scripture, in numerous prophecies, especially in the Old Testament and also from Jesus himself, that would be a sign of Jesus's soon return. Okay, the next undeniable fact that points toward Jesus' soon return is that Jerusalem was regained by Israel in 1967. I know that since then there has been a lot of conflict in the Middle East. There's been a lot of debate over the territory. And at this time, there's still debates going on and arguments over the territory, which is actually also prophesied in scripture, that Jerusalem would become a heavy stone for all nations, that it would be a centerpiece of nations, and that is actually happening today. All you have to do is look at news surrounding Jerusalem, and you will see that it is massively in the news in all nations. But that is one key critical factor, because it is prophesied also in the Old Testament that Jerusalem would be restored to the Israelites, and that it would be a centerpiece happening when Jesus does return. Okay. The third undeniable thing is that the Temple Mount institution is very close to finding a red heifer, which is critical for them being able to construct a new temple. If you go to their YouTube channel, you'll see they post regular updates on what's happening with them. They were put together for the sole purpose of rebuilding the temple, and the third temple that has been talked about in scripture actually being constructed, which is again a huge indicator of Jesus' soon return. I recognize when I say this that it obviously hasn't yet been built, but again, the whole institution is for the purpose of bringing that about. They're working on a red heifer, which is a critical component, and once they have all their ducks in a row, they're going to start trying to work on actually making that happen. So that is in the very near future. Okay, the fourth sign that I want to talk about is the Revelation 12 sign. If you guys have not heard about this, I highly recommend looking it up. I will post a video in the video description for you guys to look and see more details on the fulfillment of this prophecy. The really crazy thing is that for the last 2,000 years since this prophecy was first made by John in Revelation, it was believed that this was only symbolic, and it was representative of the birth of Christ. And then, Satan's trying to devour him, but him being taken up into heaven out of the devil's reach, and thus the devil then turning around and persecuting the saints. There's other debated interpretations, but I think this is kind of a general understanding of this prophecy in Revelation. However, in 2017, this sign described in Revelation 12 literally happened in the skies, in the stars, completely 100% according to the way it's described in scripture. This is something that has never happened before in all of history, and it probably will never happen again, because according to the sky charts, is something that would only happen well, it's never happened before that they've tracked. So that just tells you, the rarity. And so, yeah, so this sign literally occurred in the stars in 2017. Again, I'll link resources in the video description for you to look into that further so that you can see all of the fulfillment, how it all came together. I don't personally know enough about the astrological signs in order to adequately explain it on my video. But again, this was an undeniable sign that did occur in 2017. It fulfilled the Revelation 12 sign prophecy, which we didn't even know was a prophecy until it happened. And again, I will put those videos in the video description so that you guys can check it out and see those details. So the next sign that I want to talk about that is undeniable is that the Euphrates River is drying up. At this point in time, it is over 70% gone. There's a lot of people that are over there. In fact, recent reports within the last month indicate that over 5 million people are without water for livelihood, people that have been there for a long time because it's part of the Fertile Crescent that's been there for thousands of years. They're having to move, they're having to leave their homes, their farms, their crops, everything, because the water is drying up in this severe drought. Now, the thing is, I've heard people say, oh, well, it's just a temporary thing. It's just a drought, rain will come, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, guys, is that this has been happening for years. This has been slowly occurring to the point where it is now. And yes, it's true, God could choose to allow rain to fall and replenish the river. But at this moment in time, that is not the case. It is continuing to dry up. And within another few years' time, it will be a dry bed. There will be no more Euphrates River. And this is a river that was there at the very time of creation. If you go and read Genesis, it talks about the 4 rivers around the Garden of Eden, and 2 of those mentioned were Tigris and Euphrates. So this is a very critical factor in pointing toward Jesus' return. If you go and read Revelation 16:12, it actually describes this very event, and I'm going to read that for you guys right now. It's part of the 7 bowls of God's wrath. It says, "Then the 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared." Okay, so this is obviously describing something in the spiritual realm, and so we don't know exactly what's happening with all of that at this moment in time. We have some idea, but not 100%, right? But we do know that the river is in the process of drying up. And so if that comes to the point in a few years where it is completely gone, that is a very clear indicator in scripture, again, of the times that we are living in now. Okay, the next sign that I want to talk about is that, and this one's going to be a little bit controversial for some people because I know people don't really agree when it comes to current events. However, I do want to point out some facts that you can actually research and find from numerous credible and reputable sources, from doctors, from scientists, and from other people that are part of health organizations that have spoken out and have tried to let people know and have tried to warn people about the dangers of some things that the government is trying to push at the moment. So before you think about your own personal opinion, just consider the facts I'm going to share with you and the implications that has according to biblical prophecy. Okay, so this sign is that at this moment in time, many nations around the world, in fact, I would say most of the European Union and some additional countries have already started to implement and or have implemented completely mandates that do not allow buying or selling without the jab. There's a patent from Microsoft that happened in 2020 that you can actually look it up. The patent number is 060606. The patent is for bioactivated cryptocurrency, which is where there are many people trying to shift toward cryptocurrency, and they're working together in order to create a hand implant that is tied to your personal information, including jab status, your banking information, your personal information. So basically everything that's needed to know about you in order for you to be able to function in normal life is going to be a part of this insert. And you would have this also linked to an app in your phone. And so then you would have bioactivated currency and thus be able to buy and sell and operate in society under normal pretenses. The thing is that Hebrews did not use the number 0 in their writing or their language at the time. And so the patent being 060606 is actually 666. And so written in the Bible, because Hebrews did not use zeros, it would have been seen by the Jews as 666 whenever John saw this prophecy. The jab also uses an enzyme, a binding enzyme called luciferase. Please let that sink in for just a moment. And I know there's some people that say that's not true. I will post resources that are down below from reputable sources so you guys can look this up for yourselves. These are the facts. And so I just want people to be cautious and know what's going on, and mentally and spiritually equip yourselves so that you are not deceived, because the Bible does talk about many will be deceived. That is something that's in the process right now. It hasn't yet come to pass. So there are people that are saying, well, we're not receiving an implant yet. We're not at that point. Guys, I'm here to tell you that even if you're in a place in the world right now where that's not the case, it is happening in many places around the world right now. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in Germany. It's happening in several countries in the European Union, as well as in Europe itself. And actually, it's happening in many places in the United States as well. So be aware. Please know what's going on with the facts. And again, be in prayer, seek the scriptures, seek the Lord, and emotionally and spiritually be equipping yourself for what's happening. The next point I want to talk about that is an undeniable fact is that we do have an asteroid that is approaching the Earth. It's Apophis. Some of you guys may be familiar with this and some may not. I highly recommend looking it up. Here's the thing that I want to tell you guys, okay? NASA claims that this is not going to strike Earth. It's going to come so close that it will be between the Earth and the moon, and it will actually take out some satellites. First of all, if they take out satellites, those are going to be falling to Earth and those will cause damage. Second of all, this asteroid is the size of the Empire State Building. And at the moment, they estimate that it's moving at 19 miles per second, or 1,146 miles per hour. Okay, this thing is not moving slow. This thing is zipping along through space. It's plummeting towards Earth, and it's going to come so close that it's going to knock out some satellites, but supposedly not going to strike the Earth. Guys, I'm asking you to think about this logically. It doesn't make sense. If the asteroid is coming at us that quickly and it's that size, and it's going to come close enough to be knocking out satellites, I don't think that they're correct in calculating that's not going to strike the Earth. Now, you guys may argue with me on that. That's fine. But I highly recommend reading Revelation 8 through the lens of this being a giant asteroid and it causing many of the things that John witnesses in this prophecy and in this vision. Okay. It actually lines up perfectly with the effects that an asteroid that size would have on the Earth scientifically, which John, of course, wouldn't have known that. But in the vision, if you look at the first 4 trumpets and the devastation that's happening, literally it lines up exactly with scientifically what would happen if an asteroid that size was striking the Earth. The primary job of Space Force is preventing space objects from causing harm. And so far from what I've been reading, their best solution is firing an object to try and impact the incoming asteroid to change its course enough to prevent it from striking the Earth. However, there's no guarantees. And not only that, but even if Apophis doesn't hit, NASA has also openly admitted that they can only see asteroids approaching Earth and the sun at the same time. So coming towards us, toward the sun. However, they have admitted that they cannot see asteroids that are approaching Earth from the direction of the sun, so from away from the sun, but toward Earth. They have only that they will only know that the asteroid is coming when it's too late. So frankly, even if it's not Apophis that's fulfilling this prophecy, we all know the Lord can do whatever he wants and anything could strike the Earth regardless. However, I firmly believe that Apophis could be the fulfillment of Revelation 8, simply because if you guys go and watch the testimony of Thomas Thorne, he's a proven, he has some proven prophecies of the past, and he had this vision very vividly from the Lord of Apophis being the asteroid that hits the Earth and causes this mass destruction. So I highly recommend being in prayer. I'll put that video in the description for you guys to check out, and definitely read through Revelation 8 and see how the first 4 trumpets line up with the destruction and devastation that would happen if an asteroid that size struck the Earth. Okay, so I also want to say that many of the pre-warnings that have already, that were spoken of, such as, you know, in the beginning of the Olivet Discourse, and then later in the seals of the Revelation prophecies, that they have already occurred and are ongoing. So I'm going to just list some of those out. They include famines. We know there's food shortages right now all over the world. Plagues. There's been incidences of locusts devouring entire areas in some parts of the world, which has also contributed to the food shortages. Pestilences, as you guys know, there's been the pandemic, supposedly. I'm not going to argue about that. I know that there is a real virus, which has, you know, caused all kinds of havoc and wreaked a lot of problems for a lot of people. And, you know, it's devastating. And so that is another thing. It's global. There's been increasing earthquakes. If you can look it up, it has been something that has just been dynamically, exponentially increasing across the globe in recent years. There's mass falling away from the Christian faith right now and the church. Recent surveys indicate that an increasing number of young people are leaving the church, that around 24% of young people don't or really even hold biblical worldview and beliefs. And many of the rest of them are completely abandoning those worldviews. There's been many false Christs, and there is right now many false Christs. There's a lot of people that are teaching that we are all Christ. I'm not getting into that in this video, but there are a lot of false wonders and signs via the New Age beliefs and teachings, which have also permeated inside of the church. In fact, according to some surveys, up to 70% or more of believers have indicated they hold at least one New Age belief. which is absolutely insane. And there's also been signs in the heavens, blood moons, eclipses, which I'll also link additional resources on that inside of the video description, because again, I do not have all of that with the astrological signs, but I will put the resources in the description for you guys to check that out. It's really interesting what's happened though, like, you know, multiple blood moons happening back to back, which is very rare. And that's happened within the last it happened right after Israel was established as a nation, and it's also happened since. So I'll put that in the description for you guys. Other things that have happened have been wars and rumors of wars. For example, just in the last century, we've had World War I, World War II, the Cold War, the War on Terror. And yes, I recognize that wars have been a regular part of human history, but only in the last century has it actually been global. Has it been literally the entire world at war? And so that's my point, is that all the current things that we see happening are global. They're not localized to one country or one location or whatever, not to mention that at the exact moment in time, there are a ton of current Middle Eastern tensions and alliances happening that also line up with some other biblical prophecies. Again, not getting into all of that in this video, but guys, please look into it and be aware of what's happening and what's really going on. There's a lot of people that are in denial, that are saying, oh, this isn't that or whatever. Guys, seek the Lord, get in scripture, and open your mind to what the Lord presents to you, because it's very important to be aware of the times that we're living in. Now, I recognize that Revelation is highly debated about interpretation with symbols, etc., and all of that, but there are things which are very clear in scripture, and those are the things that I've tried to mention here in this video as undeniable things that have happened that you could actually go and research and look up and see what's really going on right now in our world today that very clearly indicate and point to the soon return of Jesus Christ. I also know that there is a ton of debate on, you know, other stuff in Revelation. Again, I'm not getting into that here. That'll be a different video. But again, I'll put more resources in the video description, which I highly recommend checking out so that you can get more context, you can get more facts, you can get more voices, and you can really see the things that are happening if you haven't already been aware of those things. As a really quick last note, I still believe that we do need to be cautious when interpreting prophecy. I mentioned that in a different video, because as scripture teaches, and as Jesus often pointed out to the Pharisees, they failed to understand what was happening at their time of visitation. There are numerous other places in the New Testament where the apostles pointed out Old Testament prophecies and offer symbolic interpretations instead of literal. However, I also know that scripture often warns us to be sober-minded, observant of the signs, and while we won't know the day or the hour, I know that we won't know the day or the hour, I do believe that we will be aware of the times and the seasons if we're watching and paying attention, which Jesus does tell us to do as well in the Olivet Discourse. He says that if the man had known when the thief was coming, he would have watched and stay awake so that he wouldn't have been robbed. And he's basically telling us to watch and be awake, be aware of the signs, and be watching for his return. So, that concludes this video. I've given you guys a ton of information. So again, I do highly recommend checking out the resources in the video description. And if you guys have any comments, you want to discuss anything or, you know, talk about anything, you guys are welcome to do that in the comments, as long as it is respectful and it's, you know, building each other up, not tearing each other down, because I want this to also be a safe place to discuss things in a respectful and loving way for each other. So, and thanks so much for watching.